Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are hailing from. I am not Chris Short, but and neither is my guest today. But my name is Eric, the IT guy Hendricks, and you are joining us live for REL Presents episode 23, Overcoming Security Vulnerabilities with Red Hat Insights. Before I introduce our guest, I just want to apologize. Things may be a little bit off today. As you know, Chris moved on to other things, and so around the same time that he departed Red Hat, we decided to change restreaming platforms. So we're kind of learning this as we go. So if you're wanting to become a systems administrator and think that you have to learn all the things before you can do so, yeah, you'll just if that's how you approach things, you'll just never be ready. And John, I see you smirking because I take it you know this to be true. So why don't you introduce yourself and we'll get into it.
Yeah, figuring it out is pretty much the mantra of any sysadmin. Like oh hey, we're going to get this brand new product in. You just got to figure out how to use that. Hi everybody, my name is John Spinks. I am a technical marketing manager for Red Hat Insights, which is one of the key things that we're going to be talking about today. My background is also as a sysadmin, so even though I have marketing in the title, I spent quite a bit of my career as a system administrator for Linux, Windows, SAN, hardware, email, a variety of different things. The smaller the shop, the more hats you wear. And I'm very familiar with that mantra of here's new stuff, figure out how it works. Now, Eric finding his audio back for a second. It's fighting him. But again, this is new software. So one of the things while he's struggling for the audio button, I mentioned that I'm the marketing rep for Red Hat Insights. Insights is a product that we've got that is part of existing Red Hat subscriptions that you already have today. It's included now as part of your Red Hat Enterprise Linux subscription, as well as your Red Hat OpenShift and your Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform subscription. So Insights is a pretty varied product that supports all of the major platforms that we have here at Red Hat. And we'll go into a little bit more detail here in a moment. But first, Eric, I'm going to check up on you.
Yeah, I should be good now.
I do hear you. Wonderful.
Perfect. Learning as we go. That's kind of the theme of this show and has been since it started. So today, John, you're actually a recurring guest on the show, and you kind of did a quick overview there while I was reconnecting everything of what Insights is. Did you happen to mention just how many different services are live with Insights right now?
I did not, because it's a bit of a loaded question. I don't have an exact number. Let's do it live, because that's the way we like to do things. Insights started out as the advisor service. It used to be that's all that there was within Insights. So advisor, and then we introduced the vulnerability, the compliance, and the system comparison, which is now known as drift service. There's also policies, patch, subscriptions, and we are coming out very shortly. We have in beta a resource optimization service. We also have a couple services that are in private beta. So we're somewhere between 10 and 12, depending on how you count them. We also sometimes refer to our inventory service and our remediation service. And then the entire platform has capabilities like RBAC, notifications, and these are all part of what you get in the box as well. Those are just on the RHEL side. I did mention that Insight supports other platforms. OpenShift has an advisor service as well. It also has cost management, and it has subscriptions. And then the Ansible platforms have a cost planner, a savings planner, a ROI calculator, and Ansible Analytics, And it also has advisor drift and policies. So they're up to 7, if my rough counting is correct. So yeah, there's a large number. I think we say across all of the hybrid cloud console, which is the actor formerly known as console.redhat.com, there's somewhere around 26, 27 different services that we host. Not all of those are insights, but all of those are out there and available as part of different Red Hat subscriptions.
And that's awesome. I mean, when I was a systems administrator for geez, about a decade, I would have loved to have had a tool like this because it's like having a systems administrator who's always on call, who never calls in sick, just constantly out there checking on the health and the performance of your entire fleet of started off with rel servers and then, as you mentioned, expanded to Ansible and OpenShift. So I mean, this platform has just grown exponentially. Just every single release or every quarter or so, it seems like there's new services or new features coming online. um, so I would imagine, John, not we're not trying to sell anything, but just for those out there going, we should look at this. I imagine something as powerful as Insights would be really expensive.
Again, it's included with part of your existing RHEL subscriptions. So it's something that you already have today. All we want you to do is enable it, turn it on, and see some of the value, because it is part of that value of subscription. And the reason that we talk about it that way is part of what you pay for a subscription for is support. Insights was originally created with that advisor service, and the whole goal of that advisor service is let's tell you about things that might happen to your environment before they happen. Let's give you some proactive guidance, some analytics of your environment, so you don't have to call Red Hat at 3 o'clock in the morning when your beeper goes off. It's been a long time since I've had a beeper, fortunately, but email, whatever you want to call it, you get that ding or that call from your boss, wakes you up in the middle of the night. What now? Rather than having to deal with that, if you can proactively know, oh, I have this version of the RHEL kernel and I have that version of a certain package. And with that particular combination, if it runs more than 120 days, you have a kernel panic. Oops. We notify you, and that's a real thing that we actually look for. I can't remember the specific name, but that's one of the real examples of things that Insights checks for. And we warn you at 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days with raising criticality. So if you're about to encounter one of these issues, we say, hey, this is coming. Hey, this is coming quick. You might want to fix this really fast, with the idea of we're going to let you know about it before it impacts your systems, giving you an opportunity to resolve the issue. And it could be something, maybe not that dire, but we had one of the technical account managers, or TAMs, tell me a story that he was showing Insights to one of his customers, and the customer went, I think your thing is broken. It's telling me that network bonding is incorrectly configured, and we don't use network bonding, so that's not a real thing. You got a false positive here. Well, let's dig a bit further, because it's essentially an analysis engine that's looking at the configuration of your system and saying, hey, here's things that we've discovered. So it's tripped this for a reason. What's that reason? And come to find out, one of the admins had mistyped an enum CLI command and partially enabled network bonding out of box. They never would have known about it otherwise. It's just like, we don't use this thing. What happened? But fat fingers are a real thing in the sysadmin world.
Right. So we kind of in a previous episode, you and Scott and Chris kind of talked about Insights in general, but we wanted to focus in on the security vulnerability piece. I mean, every single day, it seems like there's new attacks, new very public attacks. I mean, there was what, the Facebook thing a couple of weeks ago. There was Twitch before that. I mean, there's been pipeline attacks. There's been upstream software supply chain attacks. I mean, it's just one thing after another after another. And so this is definitely something that was top of mind before 2021. But it seems like, I mean, maybe your feeling has been different, but it feels like in 2021 we've had more attacks, more public, very public attacks. things that have hit not just IT news spaces, but the mainstream news as well, than I think we've had since I started working in technology.
Yeah, it's security is definitely one of the things that brings people to insights pretty frequently. I think the most recent one that's top of mind for me is Microsoft recently had their open management infrastructure issue that came across. And some of you may have heard of this already, but it's running systems in Azure. There was a OMI package that had a remote code vulnerability. This is not a Red Hat thing. This was a Microsoft and Azure thing. So this is something that popped up, potentially very problematic. There was packages being installed on a box that, any Azure box that wasn't really something that the admin installed or anybody purposely installed. It's just part of running your systems in Azure. It was there. And that was actually a really interesting one for the Insights team, because we found out about this vulnerability pretty much at the same time as everybody else. It's not something that's in Red Hat's CVE database. And we said, I wonder if we can detect this. Like, can we tell our customers about this issue? And the Insights team got together and super quickly figured out how to detect if this particular issue was present. I mean, it's not super hard. It's, hey, do you have a certain package and do you have a certain version of the package that is vulnerable? And then we created within the advisor service, one of the services of Insights that I was speaking about earlier, it runs on recommendations, and it's essentially a rules-based engine. I think of it as an if this, then that kind of engine, just to make it really simple. And we were able to say, hey, well, if this is present, then that's an issue. Like it's a potentially a vulnerable package, and we should have an alert. But just because it's there doesn't mean you're exposed.
Right.
But is it running? Okay, if it's running, that's a different level of criticality. Is it communicating over a port? Is that port internal or external? If it's internal, it's still critical, still super important. But if it's an external port that is communicating, that's where the real risk is. So we actually looked at these different factors and created recommendations inside of Insights that says, that looks at those different conditions. I think there's 5 total. And we said, hey, let's go look for the presence of this package. If it's not there, no biggie. We don't trip the rule. If it is there, we tell you about it. If it's there and it's running, we start raising the red flag. If it's there and running and talking, that red flag gets really, really high. Let's let you know. So this is a vulnerability that is not a Red Hat vulnerability. It is something that one of our partners had an issue with, and we wanted to let our customers know, if you are running your Red Hat systems in Azure, you could potentially be exposed. And guess what? Insights can detect that exposure for you. In this case, we couldn't fix it for you because we didn't have at the time that we did this, and it was all within roughly a day of finding out that this thing existed, that we created these rules and made them available to customers. At that time, we didn't have a remediation in place, but we were able to let you know about your exposure. And that's one of the things that you get that call about at 3:00 in the morning. Oh my God, I heard about this thing on the news. Are we exposed? Okay, boss, let me check. And without something like Insights, you're taking the time, you're logging onto each box individually that's running in this particular situation. So in this case, it'd be running on Azure. And you're checking, is this package installed? Okay, it's not there. Okay, it is on this one. Let me write that down. Rather than having to go through all of that, you click a link and you go into Insights and you say, oh, am I exposed? No, I'm good. Or, yeah, I am. And there's 3 boxes or 30 boxes or whatever the number is. We have a public blog article on that as well. I think I've sent you the link. It's not with the rest of the show links.
Yeah, I might have to dig that one up.
Yeah, I'll highlight for you. But if that's one that you can grab, you can throw it in there. But I put out a blog about that. A vulnerability can happen to anybody. It is not, it's not something that was maliciously done on the part of Microsoft, who is our partner, and they're a great business partner. In the creation of this blog, I actually talked to Azure product managers and marketing people from Microsoft and let them know that this blog was coming. because like, hey, like we don't want you caught off guard. Like we're not Microsoft going, you did a bad thing, and we want to let our customers know you did a bad thing. We said, hey, stuff happens. Security breaches are unfortunately a reality of life. Uh,
Hmm.
let's help our joint customers know if they're impacted.
Well, and what was really impressive about that particular situation was the partnership, uh, kind of in action. It's one thing to say, yeah, we're a business partner, but it's another thing for our engineering teams and their engineering teams and even the community to be working together to say, here's an issue, let's fix it, let's get it in this tool that helps our customers, our mutual customers, identify that this issue is there. So that was the first thing that really shocked me, was just seeing that partnership, that actual communication back and forth. The second thing was the speed at which this was done. I mean, it was a couple of days, if I remember the incident correctly, and the issue was identified. A Those five criteria were defined. A fix was found, and it was put up in Insights. So, and that used to take weeks, and it was
Roughly
days,
a
it was
day.
hours.
It's roughly a
Yeah.
day. And I
So
mean, that
how?
was also a big win inside of Red Hat, like as
Mhm.
a part of a product team, seeing people literally across the globe. Like, we found out about this thing at, like 4 p.m. You know, and then one of the product managers who has this thing, is based out of EMEA. Like he was on calls at 9, 10 o'clock at night his time, goes to
Mhm.
bed, wakes up the next morning, and they're like, all right, we got it, it's working. I mean,
Right.
that's awesome. That's amazing. And it takes great teamwork to, within and without, to make things happen.
Definitely. So with that kind of context in mind, and that's at the at the vendor level, but let's zoom in. And what does that process look like for a company or for an individual team or an individual of systems administrators or security admins working back and forth? Let's kind of zoom way out here and talk at a high level. Like, I mean, let's start with the very basics here. We've been throwing out terms like vulnerabilities and CVEs, so let's zoom out, and we'll kind of zoom back in with using insights as kind of our exhibit. But what is a CVE?
All right. So a CVE is an acronym for common vulnerabilities and exposures. So essentially, whenever we have a security flaw that is made public, it gets assigned a CVE ID number of some sort. And sometimes, if they're really major, they also get fun names or not so fun names. The Microsoft one that we were talking about, because it had dealt with the um, open management infrastructure, OMI. It got the oh my god. Uh, that's what they ended up naming it, and it's not part of the CVE. Other ones you might be a lot more familiar with are boot hole, or the old meltdown inspector. If you want to go back a
Hmm.
couple years, those are ones that everybody was probably really familiar with if they had to deal with it. Those get a little bit more named. I'll call them celebrity status. Those are the ones that you get the call about from your boss. It's like, what's going on? Because it shows up in a trade article or it shows up on the 6 o'clock
Hmm.
news. But most of them, and they happen pretty frequently, it's just, hey, there's a flaw. We need to fix this. It gets associated with a CVE ID. And for Red Hat, it also, if it's something that we can fix, because not every one of these can be fixed. It's, maybe it's a super old kernel version, and the fix is to go from CPU type X to CPU type Y. It's not a fix, that's a change in architecture, a change in hardware. Uh, but if it's something that can have a software fix, it gets an errata associated with it. So that's
Hmm.
a software patch or a package.
Well, and the scenario you're talking about happened to me literally with a celebrity status vulnerability called Heartbleed. So I got the call, and it wasn't the middle of the night, but it was bright and early. You could tell that someone high up on the chain logged into their news feed or over breakfast and went, "Oh my gosh, are we vulnerable to this?" And of course, I got the call, and I think the company I worked for at the time had something like 400 Linux servers, and there was three admins. And so the 400, or the three of us, got to divide up 400 servers at like 6 in the morning and go through them just a couple at a time and go, Is this here? Nope. Is this here? Nope. Okay, out to the DMZ. Uh-oh, we better fix this. And so I got to go through that whole process. And fortunately, that was one of those situations where we found a fix fairly quickly once it started going public. But I think the velocity of that has increased drastically since the days of Heartbleed.
Yeah, for sure. But in order to help make that experience better, one of the things that we built into Insights was our vulnerability service. But before we get into that, you guys have been talking, listen to us talk for about 20 minutes. I do want to go ahead and share my screen and let's start actually looking at some of this stuff because that's going to be a lot more interesting. All right, so sharing my screen here. And a lot of times the ways you may get notified of security bulletins are through your email. Maybe you get an email notification, or maybe you just go out to Google and you type in the name of a security bulletin or a CVE. And in this case, I'm just on, our main security vulnerabilities page. You can go and browse these. You can see the ones that are resolved, or some of them are in progress here. So this one that's ongoing, that one most likely doesn't have an errata associated with it yet. And I'm 100% guessing. I'm not clicking into it yet. I just see that it's ongoing. Or you have some here that don't have any notes yet. So that's just release notes. So that's simple. But for the most part, you might go into more of a name CVE like this one, CVE 2021. That's the year. And then the number is 33910. So you might be like, hey, like what is the impact of this particular CVE? And you can go through here. We've got a lot more detail. We've got a summary of what it is, the flaw itself. So you may already be very familiar with these pages. Part of it is we tell you the impact at the top, but I also want to highlight a fairly recent change is we've added in this Insights vulnerability analysis to pretty much all of our CVEs. So if you are already a user of Insights, somebody sends you to a link like this and wants to know if you're exposed, it's really as easy as clicking View Exposed Systems, and that's going to redirect you to Insights where you can say, hey, here I am. I'm already logged in. If I wasn't logged in, you'd have to log in. It uses your Red Hat account, the same one that you would use to see a knowledge base entry or download software or file a support case. It's the exact same account that you would use to access Insights. And in this case, this particular kernel bug, it happens to affect 15 systems in my environment. I can see it listed right here. Trying to wait for my thing to behave. And then I can actually see every single one of the systems that impacts listed below it and more information about it. So this is one way that people might come in and find out about a vulnerability. So I'm going to pause there, Eric, and see if you got any questions about that before I move on.
Yeah. So with the CVE database, I'm thinking that there's kind of a tiered system to it, especially if you're using Insights. So a question some of our users may have is, are CVEs exactly the same globally, or do certain vendors have certain changes that they make to CVEs? Like Red Hat's now going to track a Windows CVE because we don't have a Windows operating system. Does that
Correct.
question make sense?
Yeah, and same thing, kind of like that Microsoft example I gave, is that Microsoft CVE, it did have a number associated with it. I'm not going to have that in the Red Hat database because we're browsing Red Hat CVE. So these are ones that are specific just to us as a vendor. So all I'm seeing in here is the Red Hat stuff. So it's definitely a Red Hat centric view of the world if you're looking inside of a Red Hat product or a Red Hat website, such as this one. This is just the plain customer portal. It's the same thing if you go inside of Insights. I'm going to show you all the CVEs that are Red Hat specific, but not Microsoft or any other vendor.
So Red Hat takes all the CVEs that are out there, narrows it down to just those that affect our products, thinking RHEL or Satellite or JBoss or something like that, and kind of narrows it down to just things that affect us as a vendor, and those folks that use our applications. Does Insights give me the ability to narrow that down even further? So if my systems don't use a certain package, can I mark that? Can I set up sort of my own CVE structure? Or if there's something that is critical to my business, is there a way for me to sort of internally say this is really, really, really important. It may only be a medium CVE, but this is critical to our business. So I'm going to internally mark this as a high.
Yes. And I'll come back to that in a moment, because there's one other thing I want to highlight about the higher Red Hat process before I delve a little bit more into insights. We do have, and the name has changed. We used to call it Customer Security and Awareness. It's recently changed. I do not remember the new name. I haven't got it to memory yet, but there's actually a team that goes to some of these big security vulnerabilities like boot hole or meltdown inspector. In fact, I don't remember what boot hole is, so give me a second. I'm gonna yeah, that's fine. But anyway, there's a group that will actually go through and really dig deep into some of these really impactful vulnerabilities. And that's where this extra information comes from, like these executive summaries, if it's associated with any other CVEs. So, this one is, we're looking at this vulnerability, but then there's also an associated vulnerability. And so we're going to give you just a little bit more information that's above and beyond just, hey, there's a security flaw and you should fix it. We're actually talking in some depth here about the different capabilities. And this is just on the, right within the customer portal site. So this isn't even within Insights. Insights will redirect you to this. So if you happen to find out that a system is affected by a certain vulnerability, we're going to bounce you out here because they've put in so much work already. I mean, I'm still scrolling down this page and I just got down here, kind of towards the end. We do have a diagnosis script, a ton of references, but the really, really easy way to detect if you have something like this, like I said before, is you just go and click the button and you can see it within Insights. This does require you to register your systems to Insights, and that is a super easy process. There's Ansible scripts built in for it. There's a RHEL system role. There's a satellite role set up. And if you want to do it manually, if you're on RHEL 8, it's a single command, insights-client --register, and you're done. If you're running an older system, it's going to double your work. You first have to install that package. So it's 2 commands. You have to, install the Insights client, and then you have to register. And we actually walk you through how to do that. There's a register systems tab inside of Insights. We'll walk you through how to do it and give you the Ansible playbooks if you need it. But to your point earlier, you asked me if I have a vulnerability like this and it says it's important, but you're like, no, for us it's critical. Or conversely, if you're like, we don't care. We do give you the flexibility. If you look here kind of towards the right, there's a business risk and a status that allows some additional capabilities. And if you're already familiar, well, I got it highlighted. If you're already familiar with a common vulnerability scoring system or CVSS, we show you what the CVSS base score is in here. This one's, it's a 3.0. Sorry, it's a 7.0 is your base score. And that's compiled from a lot of different vectors. And we summarize them here for you. But if you're new to this, you might not know that AV is attack vector. If you need to know that stuff, you click the little question mark and it's going to give you all that information. And it's essentially summarizing from our database what the metrics are that make up the common vulnerability scoring system and why it's been scored the way it is. But
nice.
To your point, if you don't want that score, we go in here, I'm going to edit my business risk. And I'm going to say, you know what? This is high. Based on my business criteria, this is a high business risk. And the reason why is we need to fix this.
That's always a great reason to do it.
Say that business risk is high. That's actually going to show up in reports and stuff going forward. So you might want to watch that. Maybe you don't put something too snarky in there. But, we've got a business risk that's associated with it now. And, like I said, I set it as high. Conversely, you could put it as low. The other part of that is the status. You actually have to walk this generally through a remediation status. So once you know this vulnerability is here, have you reviewed it? Maybe if not, you move it to in review and you say, okay, we're going to start taking a look at this to see if we need to do it. Your other options are on hold. Like, hey, we need more information, or we've got to go to another internal stakeholder and get more information about, what's the criticality of this? All right, we have decided we need to fix it. Then we schedule it for a patch. Once we schedule it for a patch, we can go ahead and say it's resolved. We're done. We've fixed this issue. It's over. And Insights will also be updated when there's no more systems that are hitting it. And then the other options are no action. We've just accepted that this is a risk we're going to take. We're not worried about this particular CVE, or you've resolved it via some other mitigation. So you've got these different options. And you can set this either at the CVE level, or you could set it at individual system level. So if you've got a set of systems that are maybe they're development systems, so you're not as worried about certain vulnerabilities, you can say, hey, for these systems, it's okay. We're going to accept the risk on these. But for the production systems, we got to fix it. So once you set your status, it's now updated, it's in review, and we can go ahead to the process of reviewing all of this. So I've kind of jumped the gun here a little bit when we were talking about, because we went in the way that if you're going from the customer portal, you might go in, but I actually want to take a step back and I want to show insights at a higher level. You cool with that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I just switched tabs. If you notice, I'm here at console.redhat.com. You can also get there from typing cloud.redhat.com and logging in. And this is that home page. So this is our hybrid cloud console. And this is the thing that I said earlier, has like 27 different services on it. At any point within this, if you want to see what's coming, you can actually use the beta release. You can see stuff that's coming soon. It's not quite released yet. We plug this in for everybody. It might not have all the features. It might look a little off because it is in beta. But you should have noticed when I made that switch, it gave me a little bit of a visual look and feel. I've now got a summary here of RHEL where I can see some incidents. I can see remediation playbooks, and I have those options for OpenShift and Ansible as well. So this is a UI change that's coming, and you can flip that on and off anytime you want right here inside the UI. That settings gear also takes you to different settings inside the tool. If you want like email notifications of when things happen, you actually need to go into settings and opt in for your user. Or if you want to use the role-based access control, what's available from there. Since we're focusing specifically on RHEL today, I'm going to go right into the Red Hat Enterprise Linux section, and that's going to take me to the dashboard of insights from the perspective of a RHEL user. And this is my lab environment, my playground. So I've got 17 systems that are registered. If I wanted to register more, I click that register systems button. It's going to just redirect me inside the UI, and it's going to give me a little bit of a choose your own adventure type menu and say, hey, I'm on RHEL 8.2. I want to register using Subscription Manager. I want to use Ansible. There's a playbook. Or I want to type my commands. There's my command. That's all there is to it. And if you want to use other mechanisms, we'll tell you how to do those as well. So we try to keep all of that really simple to use right inside Insights itself. If I go back to this dashboard, there's a lot of information here. If you're new to this, it can almost be overwhelming because I've got all these different services. The names of the services are on the left. I mentioned some of them earlier. They all have different capabilities and they bring you different value. And every one of them is included, again, as part of your Red Hat Enterprise Linux subscription. So there's nothing to buy here. You just got to turn it on. The one we're focusing on is the vulnerability system. So I can see a summary here, vulnerability. I've got 33 CVEs with the security rules. That's that more in-depth evaluation of a CVE. I also have 9 CVEs that have known exploits. I want to chat about this one for a second because this is a fairly new feature. That does not mean that you yourself has a system that has an active exploit, like you haven't been exploited at this point, but the CVE itself has a known exploit associated with it. So this is, again, we're informing you of another level of criticality that you might want to be aware of.
So in other words, with a known exploit, that means somebody has actually executed this in the wild. Someone has reported, yes, this has happened to me, as opposed to a lot of CVEs are, I don't want to say experimental, but I guess theoretically possible. So with a known exploit, this means it's actually happened. Someone has compromised my system using this particular CVE.
It's not under a harvest moon in the 3rd month of the year on a day that ends with Q. This is actually something that there's known exploits out there in the wild that people could potentially be taking advantage of. So, but it's very important you don't confuse that with you yourself have been exposed. But it is important to know that these potentially have a higher level of criticality because people have, taken advantage of these somewhere in the world. And we can also see by CVSS score, you can see your summary. So, I've got some 123 between the 8 and 10 range, 800 between the 4 and 8 range, so I can see all of that information here. I can also go on the vulnerability side. I'm in the left-hand tab now, just to make sure you're following along with my mouse. I've expanded this. CVEs, reports, or systems. So I can view this by CVE. I can view this by system. I can also view, create my own report if I want to out of this vulnerability service. So if I start by going into that CVE view, this is the boss calling you saying, hey, I heard about this thing on the news. I heard about boot hole. Type in boot hole. Okay, there it is. It's CVE 2020-107-13. It has a security rule associated. I have 4 systems exposed to this. Oh, crap. Maybe I need to fix this. So I can go into the vulnerability itself. I can see, again, some of the information from these security rules. There's a link to my database. And if I want to know that these are my 4 systems that are exposed, click the box. There they are. I can export this out to a CSV or a JSON. So, boss calls up with that phone call saying, I need to know every system that's affected by this particular vulnerability now. And JSON file, done. Here you go, boss. I have that in your email in 2 minutes. I mean, it doesn't take any time at all to do. And it really helps you know what your security posture is inside your environment.
But John, isn't it just so much more fun to sit there and copy and paste all that information out of your monitoring tool into a Excel spreadsheet? I mean, I think
No,
that'd be
Eric,
more
it's
fun.
not. Actually, somewhere I'm gonna have to share another link. I'll have to dig it out. We had a third-party company, Principal Technology, that went through and did an analysis for us, and we said, your challenge is thus: take 100 systems, spin them up, and then put an experienced Linux admin on the system, and then tell us how long it takes to do a series of tasks. And one of those tasks was, like, find what system is impacted by the CVE, and then do the same thing with insights. And let's calculate time differences, step differences. And this wasn't, that's the kind of thing that could totally be loaded, but we were like, no, treat it like a sysadmin would, because you and I, we've been in that space. We're not going box by box. We're writing ourselves a script, or we're somehow automating or simplifying our lives because we work smarter, not harder. So we wanted to do it that way. And that's what they did. And in almost every case, Insights came in far ahead. And I think the only place it lost was our policy service. And that included, it lost only on number of steps. And that included steps like build a new policy from scratch and opt into email alerts. So I could potentially argue that one should have a lesser number of steps, but I'll take one. If we went on the other 10, I'll take one, but it's fine.
Well, having been on the receiving end of a security vulnerability report, you bring in some third party, they do a multi-day audit process. There's usually some black box script that they're like, here, log into all of your systems as root and run this thing. I think not.
Yeah.
And then they go, well, we have a signed agreement that says you have to do this thing, and so you do the thing, and you export their findings to a spreadsheet, and it's literally dozens of columns and thousands of rows, and you just look at it and go, I have no idea what any of this means. And so then you have to manually start grouping systems together. You get really good with the whole filtering system in your spreadsheet tool. It's like sorted by environment, sorted by system, sorted by severity, and whatever shows up on the top screen of this spreadsheet, that's what we'll focus on this quarter, because by then they'll come back and there'll be a whole new set of vulnerabilities, and then we get to look at another million cell spreadsheet that actually has crashed. I actually had a laptop crash because I opened a spreadsheet. I had to reboot and try it again.
I'm not sure I had that same spreadsheet, but I definitely had one similar. That's a real thing.
Or I could log into Insights.
That's it. One of the things I want to highlight, I think I showed when I was on the dashboard, I think the number was 17 systems registered. So, it's not a ton of systems. And I purposefully have old, outdated systems in this environment because part of my job is to show you this stuff. So for anybody watching, yeah, I'm not just a horrible system admin. I'm doing this on purpose because I want to show some of these issues. So across these 17 systems, I've got over 1,000 CVEs that impact that entire pool of systems. The default filter that we show inside of Insights, you'll notice it right here above my mouse, systems exposed, one or more. We have this turned on by default because we want to show you systems that are impacted by a CVE. If I clear this out, I just want to highlight what this is going to show for us is our entire pool of the database that we're checking against. So there's over 11,000 CVEs that we're currently checking against in this database. I'm only showing you the 1,000 or so that impact me. And I can turn that filter right back on. There's actually a bunch of other filters in here as well. So if I want to know only about those systems with known exploits, it's very easy for me to turn that filter on. I've got 9 of them. I can see what they all are right here. Again, I can export that out to a list. The lists are, they're WYSIWYG. You know, what you see is what you get. So if I've got this filtered in a certain way and I export it out, that's what it's going to show me. It's exactly what I have here on the screen. And I can also do it by, certain base scores. If I really only want to know about a range between, I only care about things between 7 and 10. There you go, done. It's pretty easy to go ahead. Oops, I didn't click enter.
That helps sometimes.
It helps sometimes, yeah. Be picky. Oh, if that's the worst thing that happens in a demo, I'll be happy. So, right. Yeah. But yeah, all of this information is here and it's filterable. It's just not a major. Oh, it is there. Never mind. So there's CVSS base scores down at the bottom. So I got, clearing the exposed, I've got over 2,000. So yeah, it's a pretty neat little tool. But one of the next steps is once you identify that you have a vulnerability, what then? So if I've got 37750 KRB5 here, I've got 10 systems exposed to it, and I'm solely picking this one because it's a decent amount of my estate that's impacted by this. I can go into this CVE. Again, I have this list of the systems that are exposed. I can actually go through the remediation process right here. So if your boss wants to know not only what systems are impacted, but what does it take to fix them, we can actually go through the process. And I'm going to pick a couple of my my systems that are connected here to a satellite, this 801, 802. I'm going to click remediate. And what this is going to do for me is fix stuff playbook. I'm going to create a playbook. It's just got these 2 systems in it. And I can add other actions to this, so I can fix multiple things in a playbook. I can have every system involved. All I'm doing right now is generating a playbook to handle this particular action, which is just upgrade the associated packages with this CVE. It does tell me that it needs a reboot. So reboot required is yes. I can turn off that auto reboot in the playbook if I want to. I'm not actually taking any action right now other than creating the playbook. So I click submit. I'm going to click my open playbook fix stuff. And that's going to redirect me to the remediation service. So if I look at my left-hand nav bar there, I'm now in the remediation section. And this has got, again, there's my CVE. That's the only thing I have in here right now. It's associated with 2 different systems, Rel 801 and Rel 802. And I'm able to download this playbook. So if I click the download button in the bottom, it's going to show me a zip file that it's pulled down. I'm going to, on the other screen, I will open that up. And I'm going to bring it over here in a second. And what we should see here is the playbook itself, my fix stuff playbook that I just created, and what technical. It does. So technical. So my 2 hosts, and we actually have there's a signature here. So if we are actually going to run this playbook, I'll talk more about that in a moment. We've got a signature letting us know that there's been no tampering with this particular playbook. We're going to check for our update. We're going to update our packages, reboot the system if it's needed, and then we're going to rerun Insights, which will make sure that it's clear. So at the end of this, this is everything that's in the playbook. I can see anything that Insights wants to do right here. If I want to manipulate this playbook and run it through an automation controller, or formerly known as Ansible Tower, you can do so. Fully supported, or whatever method you use to run Ansible totally cool. We've got that playbook. We generate that for you, and we make it super simple to fix the stuff that Insights finds just by downloading that playbook. I'm going to pause there before I talk about the next step of it. So that seems super handy.
So what you're telling me is not only will Insights with the vulnerability service bring all of the CVEs to the surface, so I can prioritize and see exactly what piece of my enterprise is affected, but now you're telling me that from the same console, I can fix all of those issues in one swoop if I were crazy.
Yep. Well, at that point, all you're doing is you're downloading the playbook, and you take that playbook and you do whatever you want with that playbook. Once you download it, it's not any of my business what you're doing with that playbook. But the part that
Well,
you just said
go
is the next
ahead.
step, which is execute playbook. That's a little bit different thing. This is the one part of what I'm talking about today that does require something more than just a RHEL subscription. This particular feature also requires satellite. So if you've got a satellite, you're good to use this, and you've already got everything you need. If you don't, then what we're talking about is a smart management subscription, which includes satellite. So if you've got that, you're good. If not, this is an advanced feature, and the button would actually be grayed out for you. It's detecting in my environment that I have it. If you don't have that particular subscription in your environment, you can't click this button. If you have it, but you haven't set it up, you'll get a message kind of similar to the one I haven't closed yet, which is do more, configure your systems with Cloud Connector. And that's a job you do inside your satellite itself. It's just an Ansible playbook that you run, and it creates a connection between Insights and cloud.redhat.com, Insights and satellite. So it just creates that connection for you. What that allows us to do is click that execute playbook button. This is telling me that my two systems are connected via my satellite. That connection status is ready. And if I want to, all I got to do is click that execute playbook on two systems button. It actually takes that playbook, it transfers it over to the satellite. The satellite, if you've got any capsules, is going to transfer it over to the appropriate capsule, and then it's going to run it with Ansible remote execution. So it's going to run this playbook for you. It's running right here. It takes, this particular one probably takes a couple minutes to run, and we could actually even see inside the UI. Click into 801. There's my playbook log, and I can see what it's doing within this Insights UI itself. So that gives it the ability, as you were saying earlier, to find it and fix it all in one place without having to bounce out to a bunch of different consoles.
So a use case that struck me as you were talking was if I have satellite, if I have my Red Hat Enterprise Linux boxes, my Red Hat satellite, and my vulnerability service and Insights all interconnected, I don't have to leave this UI. Otherwise, if we're doing downloading playbooks, I could see using those playbooks and calling them from kind of bootstrapping them within maybe a maintenance window playbook that, hey, on Saturday we're going to patch these servers using an Ansible playbook. I'm going to remediate these issues by calling another playbook, and I can actually just pre-stage all of this using Ansible, and then it's 10 o'clock on Saturday. I can kick off a playbook that calls other playbooks, or run them kind of one at a time. The best day in my sysadmin career was when I discovered Screen and later Tmux, because I could have multiple things going on in different places. But I could take these playbooks and pre-stage them so that when a maintenance window does come around, especially in the case of like your fix stuff playbook that requires a reboot, I can have all that stuff ready to go so that I'm not sitting there the night of a maintenance window going, all right, it's now one after. Now I've got to log into this box. Let me look at my spreadsheet here. Okay, so I've got to run this command and this command. I just say, nope, kick off this playbook on the system and just wait for the system to come back up. And how long would it take me to be able to go back into the vulnerability screen and see that issue's been remediated?
But pretty much as soon as it completes running, the last step of that job is for it to run Insights again. And that run of Insights, it just reanalyzes, and it takes a couple seconds at most. and it will update that, hey, this is no longer a problem, so it won't show you anymore. I think kind of to your point, I went to the remediation section here, so you can see these are all different playbooks that I've created through over the last couple months. It's in the Ansible documentation for Ansible Tower Automation Controller that actually walks you through how to set up a job on the controller side that will sync with this remediation. So you can actually sync all of these playbooks you create inside of Insights over to your tower or your automation controller. And that's where it gets really handy.
So from a high level overview, we can do more research on what CVEs are. We can look at specific CVEs. We can edit how they look to our own dashboards. So like this is we can change the business priority so that they get kind of surfaced. We look at things like which systems are what systems are affected. We can either remediate live. We can download playbooks to remediate the situation, to remediate those particular vulnerabilities later, and then we can come back within less than a minute, really, and see the updates to our dashboards. So if we took an evening long outage, we could fairly easily and quickly go through and remediate any of those top 10% of vulnerabilities affecting our um, uh, affecting our environment. Use the technical term there. It took me a moment.
Yeah, and we've got. I went back into the playbook that we started a moment ago, and I only did 2 systems. I mean, this is my lab environment. It's smaller, like for the purposes of this conversation. Like I want something that's pretty nimble, happens pretty fast. So I didn't want to run like 20 systems. But yeah, I mean, Insights can handle upwards. I think our QA testing goal, last I heard, is we're in the 250,000 range for like concurrent operations and things like that.
Oh, wow.
This is built for scale. Even though I'm showing you 2, don't be like, oh, this can only handle 2 systems. Just demo purposes, we're trying to keep it simple and easy. But really, the complexity of this is there's nothing to it. I mean, if you want to set this up inside a satellite, you go into the satellite, you run a playbook, and it configures everything for you. And satellite, any kind of technology, we know that sometimes it's not always that easy. It should be that easy. Like assuming that you're running an environment out of the box, like it should be just run the playbook, creates the connection between cloud.redhat.com and the satellite, and you're done. If you're also using a satellite, anything that Insights is doing for its analysis, that collection, it's all proxied through the satellite by default. So you don't have to worry about another web proxy or a bunch of individual nodes reaching out to the internet. It's all proxied through satellite. And we should talk a little bit about that collection before we end.
Well, we've got about 5 minutes, and I do have one other question about roadmap. But yeah, if you want to tackle that first, let's do that.
You put a link already in the chat, I see. No, actually, that's the Insights one. We've got one on the Insights security page. If you can drop that one in there. We've got a trust page out there already. It's publicly available that talks about all of the information that we do with Insights, and I've got it open here on my screen as well. If you want to know anything about what information that Insights collects, it's all here for you. That collection itself is really small. It's I think last time I ran the average was like 384 kilobytes of data that we collect and upload. We do not target any personally identifiable information. We don't want your usernames or your passwords. I don't want any of that stuff. All we're looking for is the base information that we need to detect if these situations exist. So something like that, oh my God, vulnerability. Like we need to know if that particular package is installed, what version is that package running, and is it listening on certain ports? So for that particular vulnerability, we would need to know certain things. For one, like how long has the system been running before a kernel crash? We would need to know like the uptime. So, it's basic system stats. I refer to it as metadata. All of that information is right here on this page. And if you want to see what Insights collects, we actually have a one article on system information collected for insights. There's another one further down that talks about how you can obfuscate your IP address and host names. You don't want to give them to me? That's okay. Doesn't bother me a bit. I don't need them. It does make your life a little bit easier if you want to do the remediation steps, because if you do the data upload, all we're going to see is a UUID if you've obfuscated your host names. We do let you set a Ansible host name or a short name that makes it easier for you. But if you just hide everything, at some point you make it a little harder on yourself to do the remediation inside the UI. So it's just something to be aware of. But all the granular controls of data redaction are in here. You can create a YAML file or a local file on the box if you want to, that hides information by pattern, by keyword, by command. So if you've got certain information you want to make sure never gets collected, like you have full 100% control of that. And you can generate a collection and you can look at it there locally. So you can do it without sending any data to Red Hat and be like, what does this thing collect? Most of the people that go and inspect this have absolutely no concerns with the information that we're collecting, because it all makes sense and the benefits far outweigh the risk to most people.
Well, and what's great is the services opt in to begin with.
Yes.
So it's not like we're collecting this data in the background and then saying, "Oh, you turned it on. Oh, by the way, we've been." No, yeah. It's completely opt in.
We did have one customer call us to the mat and say, "You've collected something that we consider personally identifiable information," and we were like, "Okay, tell us more. Like what's going on?" And like we have this sensitive name, and we see it in the collection, and this is very concerning to us. And we're like, "All right, well let's dig in. Let's find out what happened." Right. Turns out that a sysadmin had taken this project name or company name. I don't remember 100% what it was. But they had named a daemon inside the box with that name, and it was running. And one of the things that we do look at is what are running processes, because we need to, we can test, and there's other cool things we can do with the facts within our drift service and things like that. So we did collect the name of a running service, and it happened to be, it was named this sensitive name, and they were like, our bad. Okay, we see. And then, but we did show them, like, hey, you have full control. You can cut this out if you want to make sure it's never collected. Like, do it. Put any name in there that you're worried about, be it your company name or super secret project name, whatever it is. Put it in that YAML file or in that deny file, and we'll never collect it. We don't want anything to do with it. But it is important to note, if you say, I don't want you to collect anything having to do with the networking stack, then we potentially couldn't tell you something about like that early example of a bonding issue. Like we wouldn't know, because we're not collecting that stuff. But overall, like I think the information that's collected is fairly innocuous. It's all metadata, and you have the control over it. Take a look for yourself, and we hope you like what you see and you decide to use Insights.
Yeah, Insights, I said this at the top of the show, but it's worth repeating. I wish I had this as a sysadmin. It would have saved so many hours of, I mean, let's face it, a lot of these fixes are update this package or disable this service unless absolutely necessary. Things that are literally one command, but you'd have to repeat that command 400 times. But the worst part of it was the research that went ahead of it. What CVEs are out there? What's affecting me? And then manually going in and doing that research. I mean, that part took 100 times what it takes to just fix the actual issue. And with Insights, it's all collected for me. It's brought up in the background. I mean, it's an amazing tool. And whether you've got 10 servers or 100 servers or 10,000 servers, this saves so much time. And we only dug into the vulnerability and we glanced at the remediation pieces. There's depending on your count, there's anywhere from like 7 to 70 other services. But I can't get enough of Insights. And I love how much Insights has grown and how much it's tying into all of our other products, whether that's RHEL or OpenShift, or even some of the add-on products like Satellite or I forgot what other ones I was going to mention, but or Ansible was the other one. And just how much all the stuff interacts now, it makes it so easy to be a systems administrator, especially in an age where security is becoming more and more critical, and the infrastructure is becoming more complex. It's not everything is built behind castle walls and a moat now. Now we've got multiple castles, and then we've got stuff in towns. So of course I'm alluding to this whole hybrid multi-cloud uh, change. I mean, zero trust is becoming more and more prevalent, and all of these are things that we should definitely talk about more on this show. And John, obviously, you've written up about another 16 or so episodes that we could do, but we'll
all
definitely
on
have to have you
insights.
back. Right, yeah.
There is
So
one,
we'll
like,
definitely have to have you back on in the future. Go ahead.
and one last thing I want to reiterate as we've talked through this. Again, it's included with your existing RHEL subscription, and that is true if you're a developer, if you're in full out on-premise server user, if you're using AWS or Azure, you're using RHEL in the cloud, and even if you're buying that RHEL in the cloud from the marketplace provider, you're buying that RHEL from AWS, you're buying it from Azure, you still get insights. It's there for you. Check it out.
Yeah, by all means, play with it. Um, so that's actually a perfect jumping off point to mention that we have a Discord server. So if you look in the show notes of this episode, you can get a link out to our Discord server. I'm there. A few of the other hosts are there. It's a growing community. I think 10 new people have joined in the last 3 days. So if you haven't joined our Discord server, by all means, jump out there, ask questions. Folks like myself and some of the other hosts can reach out to folks like John to answer questions, to kind of help talk you through this, because this may be a live stream, a show, but the reality is, without our community, without those of you that jump on every couple of weeks and join us live, it's just John and I sitting here having a conversation. So those conversations are so much better when you join in. You can reach me on Twitter at ITGuyEric. And I'll drag John Kicking and Screaming onto Twitter a little bit more often, but you can reach him at JB Spinks. And we're more than happy to answer those questions. I know I'm not speaking for you when I say that we enjoy talking about this kind of stuff all the time, which is kind of why I'm pretty sure I had to twist your arm pretty hard to get you to come on.
Oh yeah, super hard. You want to do it? Yeah.
When?
No, I love talking about all of technology. I mean, it's been a passion and part of my life for so long. So something like Insights makes it really easy, because we're doing cool things. We're helping people out, and it doesn't get a whole lot better than that.
Definitely. So we'll have to have you back on real soon. Meantime, if you haven't noticed, we are streaming live every other Wednesday at, I believe, 2 p.m. Central. What time is it now?
Yeah, 3
so 2
p.m. now.
Central.
So
so we start about 2 p.m. Central, or 2 p.m. Eastern every other Wednesday. And you can now catch us on, you can catch the live chat on Discord. You can join us over Twitch, OpenShift, YouTube. And as of this episode, you can catch us live on Red Hat Enterprise Linux YouTube channel. All those links will be in the show notes. John, on behalf of all of us that watch today and will watch in the coming days, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
always a pleasure.
Until then, I think that does it for Red Hat live streaming today. But join in tomorrow. I think we've got 3 or 4 shows ranging from GitOps to OpenShift. So until then, y'all take care. Thank you so much.